Today, I want to break down this Bells of Steel trap bar and show you about 20 different exercises that you can do with a trap bar. Now you'll see these all over the market, either trap bars or hex bars. Most of them are closed. This is an open trap bar, meaning that there's no bar on the bottom here, so it goes all the way through. There are a bunch of advantages to that, which I'll show you when I break down individual exercises to do. But the really cool thing about this one, as you can see, is that it stands up. I'll be sure to put a link to this specific bar in the description, and anything I talk about, it will go in the description, so don't worry. But this is from Bells of Steel. Most trap bars that you'll find just sit like this, and they are a full hexagon, hence hex bar. This one's open, and it's got a built-in jack to it on the bottom, which means that you can prop up the bar to change the weight. So because it stands up, you have full clearance here to then slide the plates right on. The only tiny downside to this is that it tips when you put 45 pounds on, but it doesn't go anywhere because then the plate's on the ground. So once you put the plate on the other side, it balances out no problem. And then you throw clips on the side and you're good to go. And once it's done, you just tip it over and you're ready to use it. One more note on this specific bar compared to some other ones out there is this one has rotating sleeves, which depending on the exercise you're doing can be really helpful. A lot of them don't have that. But regardless, these exercises I'm going to show you are applicable for most trap bars out there. The open design is going to allow for more exercises, which I'm going to show you. But we have about 20 to run through, so let's get to it. And one other thing that I should mention is that I am not going to put weight on the bar when I do these exercises. So with any of these, imagine there's a 45 plate or a 25 pound plate, whatever it is. The problem is I'm going to run through so many exercises that I'm going to be gassed by the end. So if I throw a plate on here, I'm going to just straight up die. And I don't have the bumper plates where I can put 10 pounds on it and have it be the same size as a plate. I only have little regular Olympic 10-pound weights. So I'm not going to put any weight on the bar. But just as an example, if the bar is sitting on the ground with full plates on it, it's going to be sitting about here. So I'm going to be doing it off the ground. In most cases, you're going to have weight on the bar. I'll talk you through it, but I just wanted to give you that little heads up. We'll start with some of the most obvious ones. Deadlifting, that's the reason I got this bar. I know that deadlifting's not bad for your back, a traditional deadlift. Deadlifting incorrectly is bad for your back. Unfortunately for me, I seem to do it incorrectly a lot, and my lower back is just wrecked. So these really help. You set up just like a regular deadlift in position, and then you have the handles right directly in line with your shoulders. So it's a lot easier to get into position. The thing that I really like about doing it with this, two things. One is you stay much more upright when your hands are neutral versus over on a bar. So it keeps your back much more upright. It takes a lot of the stress off of your lower back. And then the other thing that I like is that because there's not a bar going across the front of you, you don't have to worry about wrecking your shins or hitting your knees or anything like that because this is completely open. So doing this as a regular deadlift, keeping your head up and coming up straight. And again, if there was weight on the bar, we'd be stopping, here. And now there are variations to a regular deadlift, so that's just the basic deadlift. There's a Romanian deadlift and a stiff-legged deadlift. Very, very similar exercises with slight differences. So for a Romanian deadlift, for example, we're going to start up top, slightly bend the knees, come down, and then you're going to go right before the weight hits the ground. The focus is mostly on when you come down versus a deadlift exploding up. So you're going to do a slight bend to the knees, come down, keeping your hands pretty much at your side, coming here, then back up. The difference with a stiff-legged deadlift is you're starting from the ground, like a regular deadlift, and you're going to stay more in front of your knees. So if you're picturing with a regular barbell, which I have, but it's all the way back there, You're gonna come down, you're gonna have your hands in front of your shins. So the goal is gonna be to keep your shins vertical, keep your hands in front, and then come up. And it's not fully stiff. You're not keeping your legs straight and going like this. You're gonna do a slight bend to your knees, but you're gonna try to keep your shins vertical. That's gonna keep your legs relatively straight with a slight bend. So you're coming up like that. You're gonna try to keep the shins vertical, and then you're gonna explode up like this, and you'll come down to a full stop. There will be weight, so we'll stop about here, and you'll come up. I can't believe I'm so gassed already, and that was 2 demonstrations with nothing on the bar. I'm not gonna make it. For this purpose, I'm gonna show you a Romanian deadlift. We'll just call these single leg deadlifts because there's no weight on the bar and it's hard to start from the ground. So put one leg back, come down, and back up. Doing single leg isolation work, I love. It is such a good way to switch things up, especially if you don't want to go super heavy, because it's not like you're simply cutting the weight in half. If you can do 315 pounds Romanian deadlifts, it's not going to be very easy to just throw 150 on this bar and do it single leg. It's a lot harder. I'm going to pull this bench forward. We can do a split squat with one leg back. Put one leg up on a bench behind you. Try to get into a comfortable position here. Squat down. Again, the single leg isolation work feels so good. Whoop. Now, one I'm not going to be able to do with this bench here are step ups. That is a really good one you can do. I have low ceilings. I'm in the basement. I think this is 80 inches. If I step up on the bench, I'm going to impale my head with a nail. So I'm not going to do it, but just to show you what it would look like, I'd step up onto the bench and go up. I'm definitely not going to try, but you'd step up onto the bench, come down, do it with your other leg, come down. Step ups are also a really good leg exercise. I just don't have the setup for it, so I can't do it. Here's one where the open design really comes into play, is doing lunges. You can do forward or backward lunges. You can take a big step back and have full clearance to then do backward lunges. Imagine if this was a fully closed bar. The way this comes forward, this would be hitting me in the butt and kind of bringing me forward. Now, you can work around it and you can successfully lunge with a full hex bar, but having that flexibility to not have to worry about staying inside the bar really makes it significantly easier. And one more leg exercise that's really good with these is doing a variation of front squats. Picture it more like a goblet squat if you had a kettlebell, where you're holding it in front. It's just another way to front squat without having a bar across your shoulders, because a lot of people, myself included, find it really uncomfortable to have that bar sitting there and trying to balance it. So we can actually bring this over our head and hold it up here. And then as long as I have clearance behind me, yeah, I do. And then you can do squats with the weight overhead. Very similar to a front squat, obviously slightly different. The way that the weight is sitting above you is going to be a little bit different. But if you want to switch up squats, you won't need a lot of weight. It'll also burn your shoulders, but another great exercise to do to switch things up. I am gassed. I should not be gassed. Let's get into some other stuff. Trap bars are great for traps. I think one of the most obvious ones is doing shrugs. And one thing to note about shrugs, I think everybody when they start out and they're doing shrugs, they do this. Please don't do that. There is no benefit to rolling your shoulders when you shrug. If anything, it's an injury risk. So you're gonna shrug elbows back a little bit, and you shrug, and you should feel it flex the back of your neck into your traps. You should not be doing this. Your head should stay stationary, and it should just be all a shrug. Very simple, super effective exercise that I'd say the majority of the people do wrong, and when I was starting out, I was one of those people, so I want to help you out. Another great one for the traps and or just core stabilization are farmer carries, and that's a very simple, just pick up weight and walk with it. My camera's pretty stationary right now, so I can't go very far. But when you do farmer carries, you're gonna hold weight. You're gonna put weight on here that makes it heavy. You want it to actually, you wanna feel it in your traps and shoulders. You want it to be a little bit tough, but you don't wanna throw weight on it and be doing one of those. The whole point is you wanna keep your core stable and stay as straight and upright as possible. So you put weight on here and focus on one step at a time, trying to keep it as straight, balanced as you can versus wobbling all over the place. And now a really cool variation of that you can do are suitcase carries. It's carrying something with one side. So a heavy dumbbell or a kettlebell works great. In this case, you can put weight on both sides of the hex bar and just hold this side and walk, trying to keep yourself upright. So this one works your core, specifically the obliques, really well because you obviously have weight and gravity pulling you down on one side and you're keeping yourself as stable as possible. So you're really working that opposite side to keep everything straight. And then you're doing the same thing, chest up, head straight, shoulders back, and just walking. And obviously you're gonna try to cover a little bit of distance if you have room. I don't here, so I'm really not going anywhere. If you live somewhere where it's warm and not freezing like it is right now, you can do it outside too. Very easy to do, very effective. A great just all around full body workout. How am I doing? Good? I hope good. Woo! So you can do these standing or with the bench. Again, I have low ceilings, so I can't do these standing, but you can do an overhead shoulder press with these. So the nice thing about having this open is that you can kind of sit it on your legs, or else this one's going to be real awkward to get into position. And then you're going to bring it up, bring the bar over your head, and press up. Now this one, you're not going to need much weight on here because this bar weighs 45 pounds. So you're already pressing 45 pounds over your head. This is a very, very good shoulder exercise. And then another great one for shoulders is doing front raises. If you want to really burn your delts, do front raises. I like doing these with the bar, but it's great with the hex bar because this one's open and can pass right through your body. So you're starting right at your sides and then coming up. Woo! So I will say 45 pounds is probably a lot for this exercise. If you are not super strong, it might feel like too much, so you may or may not be able to do it. Because of these handles, you can come down fully, and this will work even if you don't have an open trap bar. This will work with any trap bar because the handles are elevated, which means you get like an extra inch range of motion. So you can come down fully to your chest and come back up. I actually really like this one. I like a neutral grip bench press a lot. This is a great way to do it. You just need to be able to then rack the bar. So if you can see there, the width of the rack would be right on the sleeves, which is not an ideal situation for racking. But if you have somebody that can grab this for you, then it would make it a lot easier. But it is a very good bench press, and then obviously you can do incline or decline if you so choose. Then if bench pressing is too awkward for you, you can actually lay this down on the ground and do push-ups on it. So because these handles are lifted a little bit, it gives you a neutral grip. You can either do with your feet up on something if you want to make it more challenging. You can do it on your knees if you need it to be easier, or you can do a regular push-up. I should have moved that bench. It's really in a terrible spot. Oh, there we go. And then you just do regular push-ups on the handles. A nice way to switch it up, especially if you find yourself having shoulder or wrist pain when you're doing push-ups on the ground, it can be an awkward motion for a lot of people, especially if they're not positioned correctly. This takes the guesswork out. You're exactly the width you need to be, and there's no stress on your wrist the same way if you're flat on the ground. So it's a nice way to do push-ups. All right, so now let's get into some back exercises. Very easy to do. Anything pulling with this is great. A very basic one is bent over rows. So bend your knees slightly, bring your back forward, not completely, about a 45-degree angle, and row. We're not going straight up and down. When you row, any position, you want to focus on bringing your hands towards your belly button. So if you think about a bent over row, we're gonna pull almost back. So you're keeping your shoulder blades back, you're focusing on contracting your back muscles, and your hands are coming towards your belly versus coming straight up. And I think a very underrated exercise is the Pendlay Row, which is doing a full 90-degree bend. And so we would have plates on here. So let's say we're on the ground fully, a Pendlay Row, you would explode up, do a full row, and then rest it at the bottom. But again, the weight will be stopping here, but it's exploding up and coming down. If you want to work on being explosive, especially if you're into deadlifting, the Pendlay Row is great. It's a good way to get that initial off the ground explosiveness. Legs slightly bent, and then exploding up, and then full stop at the bottom every time, resetting, doing it again. The key is the weight coming to a stop at the bottom. It's going to make it very effective. Whew. Now the open style of this trap bar makes this significantly easier because it won't get in the way of the bench. But you go chest supported, you go on an incline, so your chest is supported, obviously. Feet on the ground to stay nice and stationary. And you're working against gravity and pulling up towards you. Again, you're not pulling straight up. You don't want your shoulders flailing out, shoulders tucked back. Pulling up more towards your belly button. A chest supported row. All right, I flipped this around to use my rack on the other side. And if you're curious about this crazy setup that I have, there is another video where I break down the bells of steel pulley towers I have that are attached to my rack. So you can check that out, but I want to show you two things that you can do in the rack itself. Inverted rows are a really great exercise you can do. It's, I think, very underutilized by people because they think it's ineffective because it's just body weight, but body weight exercises are great. So just put this bar on the rack, roll this back. Definitely underutilized by a lot of people and a very effective back exercise. And a variation of deadlifts you could do are rack pulls. Now, I would have to adjust my rack right now, which, to be frank, I just don't feel like doing. So what I'm gonna do is cheat a little bit because you guys don't mind. So we're gonna come in front of the bench, in front of the rack is what this thing's called. A rack pull, you're basically starting about halfway. So it's working the top portion of your deadlift and more so hitting your back. Because you're taking that initial pull off the ground out, you can go a lot heavier. So you hit the top of your movement a lot harder. So with the rack, I would set it up so the safeties are about at my knees. So I'd be starting about here. And then you're just doing a regular deadlift of exploding up. You can do it on blocks as well. But the idea is you're taking out that initial half to like your thigh area. So you're going to start right at your knees, slightly below about shin, upper shin, if that's even a thing. And then doing a regular deadlift, but the focus is your back. It's basically all back. Your legs are mostly out of it, extending up. And that's a rack pull. And last but not least, but kind of least, are you can do arm exercises, biceps and triceps. You can create variations of these by going into different positions. I'm just going to show you the very basic, just standing. Maybe triceps I'll sit because of my low ceilings. But you can do hammer curls with this. Just holding. I hold at the top, kind of where the bend is, just because it's more comfortable. But arms at your side, curl up. And this is a 45-pound bar, so that might feel like enough weight for you. You might not even need to add weight. But you can come fully to your side because of the open design. And we could also do triceps. So for triceps, if you want to, you can do overhead. If you use the handles, not super comfortable because it's so wide and awkward. So if you try to go overhead with this, the way that it's distributed is probably not great for your wrist, but you can hold this and come down and do overhead extensions. So there you go. I am gassed, but those are 20 plus exercises you can do with this trap bar. There are probably so many more that I forgot to include. I'm gonna keep playing with this thing. I've only had it for a few weeks. I'm sure I'll come up with more exercises, but those are the main ones. And if you're wondering if a bar like this is worth it, 100% yes. I love the way that it kind of switches up training. You don't need it by any means. If you have a barbell, you can do most of the exercises I'm talking about. A barbell or dumbbells will do the trick. This is just a good way to switch things up. You can buy a cheaper trap bar for sure. If it's just a full hex bar without the open design, it's going to be a lot cheaper. This is not an expensive piece at all, which is why I totally recommend it. I don't really like buying high-end expensive equipment, which is another reason why I love Bells of Steel, and I'm pretty much a loyal lifetime customer for them because everything's affordable but awesome. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Do my best to answer them. I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy with a home gym, but I love working out and I love finding different things to do at home. So I'll do my best to answer as best I can. And if there's anything else you want to see, I'm trying to make it a priority to do more home gym content, just fitness content in general. So your feedback is super, super valuable. Let me know what you want to see or what you don't want to see. Just any and all feedback on this video or others, super helpful for me. I appreciate you guys so much, and I hope you enjoyed this. Oh man. Guess I'll go shower now. Wow.